had a good for you moment? You're probably wondering what a good for you moment is. I remember a time I was sitting in a hotel lobby finishing up a conference call. I was in a little nook in the corner so I wouldn't disturb anyone, but two women came over and sat with me and continued their conversation. I informed my colleagues on the phone that I wouldn't be able to make our next call because I had to teach at the time that it was scheduled. And then I said my goodbyes. When I hung up, one of the women sitting near me smiled and asked, "Are you an elementary school teacher?" I smiled back and I said, "I'm a professor." The other woman then asked, "Like at a university?" When I responded yes, the first woman replied, "Good for you." And they returned to their conversation. At that moment, I wondered, what just happened? What did I say that had produced such a reaction? In reflecting upon that and related situations, I questioned why some people respond to our accomplishments or our good fortune with excitement, while others respond more dismissively. More importantly, I wondered, what can we do to create more authentic, communal, and celebratory moments in our interactions with others? Now, whether we acknowledge it or not, we all make assumptions. We may not realize that we do, but it's our way of dealing with all of the pieces of information that come our way on a daily basis. We use assumptions as mental shortcuts to process an event, a situation, or a decision. They help us to make sense of our environments and understand how to react. But what is more fascinating is how these shortcuts work. Our assumptions are formed by our prior experiences. When we encounter a situation that is unfamiliar or ambiguous, like this one, we attempt to fill in the blanks. We take cues from our surroundings and match them to our past encounters to determine our responses to the situation. Based on our prior experiences, we also learn what to expect under certain circumstances and come to rely on our intuition when we find ourselves in similar situations. As long as events are consistent with our expectations, we basically remain on autopilot and navigate through the world with an effortless attention. For example, look at these words. At the count of 3, let's say out loud the colors of the following lines of text as fast as we can. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Blue, green, brown, yellow, red. But what happens when things aren't as we expect? Now look at these words. At the count of 3, let's again say out loud the colors of the following lines of text as fast as we can. 1, 2, 3. Yellow, red, brown, blue, green. Not so easy, right? We believe that as humans, we are rational and logical and unbiased. However, research shows that approximately 98% of our day-to-day thinking relies on mental shortcuts and is quick, routine, reactive, and driven by our instincts. This means that if we happen to encounter information that is contrary to our expectations, we don't know how to process that information. Of course, if we're talking about the relationships between words and colors, this may not seem like much of an issue. But how does this influence relationships between people? When dealing with people, one of our mental shortcuts is to categorize ourselves and others into social groups. For example, I'm a woman. I'm from Philadelphia. I'm an alumna of the University of Delaware. We tend to create our social identities by associating ourselves with those whom we perceive to have similarities. What this means is that I'm likely to try to establish a connection with other women, Philly Johns, and Blue Hens. This categorization and association process helps to locate ourselves in the environment and gives ourselves information about how we relate to others around us, and in the process makes us feel good about who we are. But what happens when we encounter someone we don't know or for whom we don't have information? Our shortcuts activate. Similar to what we did when shown that beautiful yet obscure landscape picture, we rely on context cues and our past experiences to attempt to fill in the blanks. For example, if I see someone walking down the street with a dog, it may be natural to assume that that person is the dog's owner. Or if I'm at a hospital and I see someone in a laboratory coat, it may be intuitive to assume that person is a lab technician. Or if two women overhear a youthful looking African-American woman on the phone say that she has to teach, it may be instinctive to assume that she's an elementary school teacher. Although such judgments are quick, routine, and reactive, we honestly believe that we have used sound and impartial logic combined with our experience to thoughtfully analyze the available information and make an informed decision. Which is why we're surprised when we encounter information that runs contrary to our expectations. Such information disrupts our worldview and unsettles that good feeling that comes from knowing how the world works and that what we believe is true. So if we find out that that person walking down the street with a dog is actually a professional dog walker, or that person in the lab coat just happens to be a doctor, or that youthful looking African-American woman is a university professor, it alerts us that we may not know as much as we thought we did. And that produces a feeling of mental discomfort. In that moment, we don't know how to deal with the situation or resolve that feeling of uneasiness, except to respond with, "Good for you," and then move on. But to be honest, it's that move on with which I struggle. Because while it may be the easiest or the most comfortable response, I wonder if it's the best response. I find myself wondering what can we, or more specifically, what can I do to connect more positively and authentically with others? At a basic level, we need to establish connections. Well, there are so many things that make us different. There are just as many things that make us the same. Therefore, we can relate to others by sharing information about ourselves and attempting to find a point of common ground. For example, I may introduce myself by telling you about my hobbies or my pastimes, which, by the way, include listening to podcasts, running, and wine. We can also ensure that those connections are real and genuine. Rather than falling back on our assumptions and mental shortcuts about others, we should invite people to tell us who they are. In doing so, we start to see people as individuals rather than as members of a category. We also identify and focus on our similarities and shared interests rather than our differences. Now, if others tell us something we don't expect to hear, we have to be willing to incorporate this information into our belief system and change our assumptions. It's okay if we don't know something or rely on our mental shortcuts as long as we're open to revising our expectations when presented with new or inconsistent information. There is so much diversity in the world, even within social groups, that it's unlikely that our shortcuts will hold true for everyone and in every situation. Therefore, people in situations that diverge from our prior experience are actually opportunities to learn and to grow and expand our worldview. Now, I'm going to warn you that it may feel uncomfortable, but that discomfort is what moves us towards becoming better people. So when we meet someone that challenges our way of thinking, we can now pause to realize what a wonderful opportunity we've been given to experience someone who's unique and distinctive and who broadens our network as well as our perspective. And we can celebrate that encounter as neither good for you nor good for me, but actually is good for us. Thank you.